Okay, we are live. Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today, we'll be giving our review on King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, which is Guy Ritchie's latest film. It's the fantasy epic film, as it's dubbed on Wikipedia, although none of those words really filter into this movie for me at all. This is, of course, starring Charlie Hunnam and Jude Law, and essentially the entire supporting cast of Game of Thrones. This is going to be a very interesting review today. We've spoken about this film before, and actually we both sort of, before even starting this stream, had the same response of, we've essentially forgotten this movie, and we both went to see it yesterday, which doesn't bode well at all.
It doesn't bode well indeed, and it's a shame that we now have two films in a row which are not favoured in our own sense of what we like or dislike. I thought this film was going to be okay. I thought that what's his face? I can't even remember the director. Guy Ritchie would be able to pull something, anything out of the bag with this film. Obviously,
out of the stone.
I was proven so wrong, so unbelievably wrong. And one of the directors who I thought, yeah, he's always done good kind of films. Snatch is one of my all-time favorites. I have the DVD copy right in front of my head right now. Like, to go from Snatch to this, it's disgusting. It really is.
This movie was an absolutely cataclysmic disaster, pretty much in every single facet of the movie. It's one of the most incompetently put together movies I've ever seen in my life, down to direction, editing, pacing, character, essentially all the ingredients you need for a successful film. This was horrendous. Now, I knew it wasn't going to be a good film, not just because every review I read, whether it be in the newspaper or on the internet, were all giving it like 1 out of 5 if you go by numeric scores.
Yet, at the same time, it's got a 7.3 on IMDb.
That absolutely boggles my mind. I don't. Maybe it's the film company like making accounts on IMDb and just rating it highly.
Well, here we go. We'll go with the actual film description with the trusty IMDb. Robbed of his birthright, Arthur comes up the hard way in the back alleys of the city. But once he pulls the sword from the stone, he is forced to acknowledge his true legacy, whether he likes it or not. And this is one of those films where we're probably not even going to have a non-spoiler section, purely because it's...
No, we will do non-spoilers, but it won't be a long section.
It's so bad that even if we did spoil it, it would probably enhance the experience if we did actually spoil it, because at least you'd then have a clue of what was going on.
Yeah, so before we even get into our review, kind of what you just said, this is a spectacle that has to be seen to believed. And when I say spectacle, I don't mean in terms of a great cinema-going experience. I mean just what an absolute, complete and utter train wreck this film is. You have to bear witness.
I want to first say it's nowhere near as bad as High Rise. Like, High Rise is on a different scale.
Yes, yeah.
Compared to this film.
High Rise was boring bad. This was mostly boring bad, but when it went completely ridiculous, it kind of made the movie entertaining at some point.
It may have snuck in to the top 5 if it was released last year for worst films of the year.
Yeah, definitely. And if I talk about Guy Ritchie for a bit, I mean, his style of direction isn't really my kind of thing. Like, I understand its appeal to some. I did watch Snatch. I really like that film. I have yet to see Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, although I've heard that's really good as well. And we were talking about this before we hit record, and you were saying that his style works for the kind of modern British crime films. And even for Sherlock as well. I mean, I didn't like Sherlock. I know you didn't mind it, Tate. You quite enjoyed it. But
I quite like it, yeah.
Even the tone for that, in some respect, can work, because Sherlock's a character that you have many different adaptations of and interpretations. And we've seen the BBC series, which, you know, does go a little bit zany and quirky in parts, and that's essentially what Guy Ritchie's did as well. The fast-paced editing in it and the really frenetic camera in some parts, that played up to Sherlock's mindset and how he figures things out. So I didn't really have a problem with it in that, although I didn't like the movie overall. This just, it has no bearing on this kind of setting, this medieval setting, and it's wildly distracting every time that it happens. And even with the trailers, I mean, I knew exactly what kind of movie it was going to be. Although I will argue that it only really turns into a Guy Ritchie film in about like 3 key scenes in the film. Everything else just feels like a really bad Gods of Egypt kind of movie.
Yeah. Let's say that Guy Ritchie does best is dialogue. When he's able to get a dialogue train, and it's the interaction between characters and character building, which he tends to do best. I mean, the entire scene in Snatch, where like you're introducing a character and you have like the whole scene of who's Bullet Tooth Tony, and then they move over and show Bullet Tooth Tony doing stuff, and then they explain it, and it all feeds back in together.
Mm-hmm.
That works. It really does. This film is ridiculously CGI heavy. It really is.
Oh,
and
yeah.
for the opening literal scenes, it is like stupendously heavy on the CGI. And I think what may actually sum up this film is possibly the opening line of dialogue. And I was thinking, yeah, Guy Ritchie, we're going to get some interesting lines of dialogue. Do you want to know what the first line of dialogue was, Chris? Do you remember it?
I do not. I remember the opening scene. I don't remember the opening dialogue.
The opening line of dialogue is Eric Bana handing Jude Law a crown, and he just says, "Hold crown." Not hold the crown or hold this crown, hold crown. And from that point on, I thought, oh God, what have we got ourselves in for now?
Well, we'll get onto the opening scene more in spoilers. Although I will say the trailers do spoil the opening scene of the film and the final shot of the movie. So take that for what it's worth. So yeah, like I'd seen the trailers, I knew what kind of movie it was, and if I'm thinking of like another sort of medieval movie that has that modern edge to it, the only other movie that's coming to mind is A Knight's Tale, which, you know, has a big cult following. I didn't really care for that movie, although it's light years better than this one. So initial thoughts, I didn't.
What about Warcraft?
It's, you know what, I did actually bring up the Warcraft thing when I watched it as well. I can absolutely see that comparison. You know, when he holds onto the sword and his eyes go like glowy, kind of looks like a mage. There are mage characters in this, although no Merlin. I don't know if that's a spoiler alert, but that really bothered me. Let's get on to the characters themselves. So we'll start with the titular character of King Arthur, played by Charlie Hunnam. And as I said before we hit record, Charlie Hunnam does a fantastic job of playing Charlie Hunnam in this movie.
Well, I had a problem with him in Pacific Rim. He kept on changing his accent in Pacific Rim. He does that in this film. He can't decide whether he's a Cockney English bloke or an American, and he keeps on switching between the two, and it's awful. It's horrible. And once you hear me say that, you can't get out of your head watching throughout the entire film, because 1 minute, like, it changed like 3 times in one sentence. Once he started the sentence Cockney, went American in the middle, and then ended it Cockney again. I was like, get a fucking grip of yourself, man. Like, seriously. And not only that, but just the character itself. Like, you want the lead character to be likable or supportable in some way, shape, or form. I really didn't care if he died in this film. I'm not gonna lie. He was such an unlikable character. Like, they made you hate him because he's a dickhead to everyone else. And when you have a character who's the main character who's a dickhead to everyone else, you've got to have a villain who is beyond completely way performance-wise better and outstanding to kind of counteract that. And maybe if he's an asshole, but he has the birthright, and then Jude Law's character is on the evil side, but at least he's kind of got a strong head for the crown, that would bring up some debate. But no, it was just really, really bad.
It's like if you're looking at other fantasy movies where you were talking about there that the villain completely outshines it. You look at like Dungeons and Dragons, for example, where you've got Jeremy Irons as the bad guy and he plays it completely over the top. He's having the time of his life. Yeah. Or oh god, there was the other one I was thinking of, Eragon with John Malkovich, who I think only shows up for like the last 5 minutes of that movie, but he plays it really over the top as well. I'll agree with that completely. To me, Charlie Hunnam in this was like a discount Tom Hardy, but whereas Tom Hardy's actually a really good actor, Charlie Hunnam isn't. But even like just how he looks, I could imagine Tom Hardy playing this character and playing it just so.
Do you reckon they asked for Tom Hardy?
See, I don't know. I don't know how much older Tom Hardy is compared to Charlie Hunnam, or if they're around the same age. I'm guessing he's got to be a bit older. But
Tom Hardy's Venom now, isn't he?
yes, he is. Yeah, but when you see Tom Hardy, for example, when you see a Charlie Hunnam's character in this as King Arthur, and he's doing like the boxing and he's getting ready for a fight, it reminds you of moments like Bronson. At least it did to me. And I did think he looks like Tom Hardy a lot in a lot of scenes.
Charlie Hunnam is 37. Tom Hardy's 39. So that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess he could have done it.
I'm going to go ahead and assume that Tom Hardy, if he was offered this role, probably said no and went and did Dunkirk instead.
He probably just laughed in their face.
I'm not going to lie, like, he doesn't even play a good Tom Hardy, Charlie Hunnam.
No. This is why it's a really difficult review for me to do, at least, is that I feel like I have no opinion on this movie. It's an absolute nothing movie.
The movie is dead. And therefore, we feel dead because of it.
It's dead on arrival. That's the thing. Like, and I will actually say, for my cinema going experience, I guess I can talk about the specific bits in spoilers. But I mean, there were moments in this film. I went to see this with my mate, and we were just laughing at what we were witnessing. Just the train wreck that we were witnessing.
I'm not going to lie though. When I went to the cinema, like for my cinema going experience, quite a lot of the people liked it, and not only that, but I heard a couple of people clapping in my screening at a certain moment, which was like, you barely ever hear clapping in a cinema. I heard clapping at the end of Suicide Squad from a couple of DC fans who was sat like directly in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting. This film having clapping just randomly in the middle was a bit, okay, interesting. But no one seemed pissed off. A lot of people were really kind of, oh, yeah, how was that film? Yeah, it was okay, yeah. And I was just like, the fuck? Were we watching the same film? Like, what film were you watching? Yeah, it was really weird. So, I mean, obviously, IMDb's got like a 7.3, so maybe the public perception is different to sane people's perception.
That's interesting you bring that up, actually, because there were two guys directly behind me, and you could tell they went in that screening exactly the same reason I did. Like, they just wanted to see how bad it was going to be. And they were laughing at exactly the same bits that we were, and like going like, what the fuck, when something like really weird happened. But there was a bigger group behind me as well. And I did hear them after the film finished going like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really good. And that was just even more incentive for me to get the hell out of that cinema screen as quick as possible.
Get out. No, it wasn't the best film. And I mean, as far as the two, let's just talk about the two characters. I mean, Vortigern, played by Jude Law, the only other character really worth talking about. He had one scene where I actually felt emotion for the character, and one scene which they should have expanded on more, and that was it.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
See,
dull as hell villain.
I don't blame Jude Law, because Jude Law's a great actor. Sometimes depends on the project he's picking, but it's interesting to see him play a sorcerer in this, and then we know that he's going to be playing the young Dumbledore in the next Fantastic Beasts movie. I really don't have an opinion on him. He's just such a stock bad guy from the opening scene. There is no sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Ambiguity. There's no ambiguity at all.
Sorry, this isn't a spoiler. In the opening scene, after Eric Bana says, "Hold crown," and Jude Law's like, "Okay, fine, whatever." You see a shot of him stood alone, holding the crown, staring at it.
Yeah,
and that's okay. That's passable. That's like, okay, good. So he's got a thirst for the crown. We immediately gauge that, and the fact that he's not going to take the crown immediately because, like, of the events that are taking place, like, that's good. That's setting it up. That's brilliant. No, it wasn't. It really wasn't. You could have played that so much better.
If you flesh his character out, he is essentially Macbeth. Like, he is a Shakespearean character through and through, down to all the actions that he's prepared to go through to maintain power. That could be a really interesting character if done in a better movie. Yeah. Give him more screen time, give him more of a presence, but this isn't that kind of movie. Actually, that's a good point. What is this movie? What's the message it's trying to say? I really don't know. It's a film that says absolutely nothing with these characters, and it's really annoying because Arthurian legend has some of the best characters ever. I mean, it's a property that's been adapted in many different areas, whether it be animation or live action, throughout the years. And we're at the stage now where we could really do this justice. We could really have the next truly great fantasy epic. And unfortunately, it looks like we're going to be waiting until the next one. I think the last King Arthur adaptation I can remember was the Clive Owen one with Keira Knightley.
Yeah.
I think from the early 2000s, I think that was the last one. That got it completely wrong. And, they're just not doing a good job with these. Still, my favorite, I think, is probably...
Mind you, there was a couple of moments in this movie where I thought, am I watching Robin Hood? Because it's a main dude and it's these merry men and they're thieving from the king.
Yeah.
And they're giving to the poor.
Well, actually, the supporting characters in this movie absolutely, I won't say carry it because I absolutely detest this movie, but the supporting characters actually had a little bit of personality or quirk to them, or just something, anything.
Not only that, but they had an agenda. They actually had a reason for being there. Like all of the other characters were there to pick up a paycheck, and that was it.
Yeah, and I mean, Aidan Gillen's in the movie, who plays my favourite character in Game of Thrones of Littlefinger, so it was amazing to see him in a movie again. Actually, Roose Bolton from Game of Thrones was in it too. This is what I meant.
Sorry, was that amazing to see him in a movie again since The Dark Knight Rises, or was that amazing to see him in a movie again since
I forgot he was. Jesus!
Ha! Trapped you in again, Chris. See. It will always come back for you, Chris. It will always come back.
That movie just hangs over me like a fucking shadow. We've talked a bit about the direction, but if you wanted to go more into it now, I'm going to bring this into the editing with it. This film moves way too quick. This is where I bring it in that Guy Ritchie's direction really doesn't suit this kind of movie, because there are scenes in this, like we just explained with Jude Law's character, where you really want the film to just take a step back and just breathe and take time and devote time with scenes to these characters. But it feels like it's just done at such a breakneck speed for style, and the style just doesn't work for King Arthur. It really doesn't. So I don't get why the studio wanted Guy Ritchie to direct this movie. Maybe they looked at his back catalogue of movies and thought, he's done some pretty decent movies in the past. Let's see if lightning strikes twice.
I think Guy Ritchie thought, I'm doing well with Sherlock Holmes. What other English folktales can I adapt?
Yeah.
Like, what other stories can I adapt from? And I reckon they thought, oh, King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table. Okay, I can set up an entire universe with that. Hence why there are 6 planned films. Don't know if that's going to happen anymore.
That's so not happening. That's so not happening.
It's funny. Reminds me of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Mind you, that did really well in China, so you never know. But this film, I don't think is doing very well everywhere. Because that, I don't know, maybe 1, 2 sequels. They're not going to get 6. Jesus Christ, no.
Well, I mean, next week we've got Baywatch and Pirates, so this movie's just gone.
The directing was horrible. Like, really bad. And it wasn't helped by the editing, which was also horrible. It's almost as if they thought, we've got this footage. What is the worst way we can fuck this up?
Well, the first 20 minutes, scenes were appearing on screen and with no setup for anything, really random imagery, and that's fine. Some movies just throw you into that if it explains it. This movie didn't, so people were just laughing. Skeletor shows up in this movie, spoiler alert, kind of, and we don't get any setup for that at all, or explanation. And with the editing as well, and I know we disagree on this, you like the fast, talky dialogue scenes in this, which is classic Guy Ritchie.
Okay, the classic Guy Ritchie stuff works. It doesn't mean it's good, but it works. And it's what I wanted from the film. I wanted that kind of dialogue. The way the dialogue went, not so good. So it's somewhere where he can definitely work on, especially if they are going to be doing sequels to this, because they massively sequel bait. Jesus Christ, they sequel bait. That is the kind of stuff that I'd want to see more of. In the fight sequences, I know this is obviously we want to try and make it Mad Max, but we also want to make it set in Arthurian times. With Mad Max, you could see every single bit of action. Yeah. And it was all practical. With this film, it looked like Devil May Cry.
My God. Absolutely.
It seriously did. And the final fight scene is genuinely a boss battle from Devil May Cry. Yeah. It just looks like it. It's ridiculous.
I compare. We're getting into spoilers now, so I can't talk about it as much as I want to. We'll get into that in our spoiler section. But you're absolutely right. There's a moment towards the end of this film in the final fight where I turned to my friend and said, "Right, which character do you want to be?" Right. Okay. I'm gonna hit the reaction commands right now. Okay. And it feels like you could
Yeah.
put like if PlayStation
Quick
control,
time
for
event,
example, like
quick time event, quick time event.
yeah, like X,
Spam
square,
X,
triangle, circle,
spam X,
mash, circle,
spam
mash,
X.
circle, mash, circle, and then you win. Yeah. No. Oh my God. When he starts wielding the sword in this film, I don't know who okayed that. That is not okay. The camera goes into like a weird 360-degree
Like a
CGI
reverb. I was
landscape.
expecting a heavy metal rock album to start when he picked up like. It was like,
But the point is, you can't see anything. Like there's like dust clouds, and you can't focus on anything, and it looks cartoony. And Charlie Hunnam turns into like a CGI avatar for a while and becomes Quicksilver. It looks
it'd be hilarious if Charlie Hunnam just turned into one of the avatars from the film Avatar.
I can't.
It's secret. And then James Cameron pops up. So this is my film now. Secret Avatar sequel. Just like.
It's just the action in this film is just so weightless and tonally inconsistent with anything that's to do with King Arthur. I will say the opening scene, although it did feel like an anime, I was kind of on board with it. I'm like, this is cool. It's sort of reminding me of Lord of the Rings.
Well, you need one of those teen rock albums playing in the background, like what's it called, Evanescence or something like that.
Yeah.
With
although
it would actually be an anime.
It reminded me of like a segment from Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch. Like I think there's like a medieval fantasy part in that movie. But I was kind of on board with it for that and was like, okay, if the action's like this, fine. But as soon as he started using the sword, I was just, this is awful, abysmal. There are some other action bits in the film as well, which are like sort of handheld camera, very close up in the face, obtrusive. I didn't like those. I know you liked that scene. We can talk more about that in spoilers, but
yeah.
I see. This is what I mean. I don't know what this film is for because the action's bad, so you can't say it's an action movie. The characters are non-existent, so you can't say it's a drama. You can't really say it's a comedy because the jokes there are some funny jokes in it, but not laugh out loud funny. You kind of like chuckle occasionally.
It froze as far as it wasn't comedic. It wasn't anything really. The only thing that you can say was it's a fantasy film. That's only because it's got mages in it and it's got magic, and that's basically the whole point of the film. Like, one person wants magic, the other person has the ability to have magic, but only if he has a magic sword. So he's got to be helped by his magic friends to take down the magic man using magic of himself.
Hashtag magic friends. I like that.
What was it? The Legend of Arthur. Magic friends.
That's the sequel. Don't spoiler alert the sequel time.
Not Legend of Arthur, League of Super Friends.
I'm looking at the music for this. So Daniel Pemberton.
What's their music to this? I really had no idea.
Well,
all I heard was the occasional drum beat, and that was it.
He's worked with Guy Ritchie before on Man from U.N.C.L.E. I'm looking at anything else he's done. Recently, he's done the film Gold with Matthew McConaughey. He did the music to Steve Jobs, which, again, I don't really remember, but I remember it kind of...
You don't remember the background of that film because it's a dialogue film?
Yeah.
Like, that's just not what you remember from it.
There's some like elements that are used in the trailer. I think they merged it with a Led Zeppelin song in the trailer for this film, where it's like heavy percussion as they're running through the streets. There's a bit of a sort of Celtic Irish lilt to some of the songs at the beginning of the film.
No, that felt like Sherlock Holmes. He just regurgitated the music from Sherlock Holmes in those scenes.
Yeah. Besides that, there are no definable themes. It very much blends into the background. It doesn't enhance the film, because sometimes a good soundtrack can enhance a bad movie. You look at the Transformers films. I love the soundtracks of those films, but the films are still terrible. The soundtrack, I don't have any opinions on at all. It was just
none. The next thing on our list of things to talk about is the overall opinion.
In case you didn't gauge that already.
It is shocking. It is so bad. Like, it's jumped up to my #1 worst film of the year.
Same.
You have to see it to believe it, but I'm going to go ahead and say don't see it and just believe it. And by God,
that was deep.
If I have to use the power of my mini Excalibur to kill Guy Ritchie before he gets a sequel out, then so be it. I will kill him with my letter opener.
Wow. Yeah. I completely agree with you, man. Not that I'm going to be an accomplice to murder. That I agree with your opinion on the movie.
You're in it now, Chris. No getting out.
This was wildly awful. More so than I was expecting it to be. It's never have I seen a film so incompetently made. It's been a while since I've seen a movie this bad in the cinema. Like, I know we see bad movies every now and then, but this was just, in terms of how it's made, just from the ground up, everything was wrong with this movie. It was laughably bad in some scenes. This film had no redeeming qualities at all to me. It's a completely forgettable experience to the point where I'm actually really struggling to talk about it a day after watching it. We both are.
Yeah.
It's utterly abysmal, and I'm going to talk more about it in spoilers as to what made me have this realization, but this makes me really depressed that Guy Ritchie is going to be the guy that's helming the live-action Aladdin film in a couple of years.
He's doing Aladdin.
He's doing Aladdin. That's why I mentioned it in the comments.
That's bad.
And we know exactly what kind of movie that's going to be like after watching this and after watching all of his other movies. So that's
we're gonna just hate Aladdin.
Of course we are. I mean, I'd probably hate it anyway because it's a live-action adaptation of a Disney film that doesn't need remaking in the first place. But that's just my opinion on it. But after we see what tone Guy Ritchie does with his movies, that's just going to be horrendous for that movie.
The magic carpet played by Brad Pitt, but Brad Pitt from Snatch.
That's just, you like dags. That would be an interesting experiment. That would be fun.
You have Bricktop playing Jafar.
Jafar. Oh my god. Do you know what nemesis means? A righteous infliction. You fucking cannon.
What's that little street fuck doing in my...
So he's got the salt and he's like, feed him to the pigs.
Yeah, feed him to the tiger.
You know what? I take everything back. I can't wait to see Guy Ritchie's Aladdin.
Feed him to the dogs, Harold.
Yeah, like you, don't go and see this movie. Don't even go and see it out of curiosity. If you are really curious, just wait for like DVD or watch it free on the internet because you really don't want to give money to this movie, believe me. So that'll do it for our review on King Arthur, the spoiler-free section. We're going to get into spoilers now and talk about all of the scenes that drove us up the wall and that we couldn't stand or that we scratched our heads over and didn't understand at all. Starting with literally the opening of this film, the opening frame.
Hold crown.
No, not even that. The opening shot of this movie. So we get a black background. It fades into a tower with flame. It fades out. We then get a completely unrelated section of elephants attacking a castle, which is fine. As I said, you've got like I know they're magic elephants. We get told they're magic elephants. They're elephants controlled by an evil sorcerer. But for some reason, these elephants are like the size of a skyscraper. They're like bigger than the Oliphants from Lord of the Rings. It's quite remarkable. But it's kind of ridiculous. Fun in a dumb way. I don't know. It's cool imagery. It's cool imagery to see these huge elephants with like wrecking balls on the trunks and just like smacking armies out the way. It's fine.
And they're blasting out Miley Cyrus Wrecking Ball whilst they're
they may as well. So Eric Bana's the king, and he just leads like a one-man mission to take down this elephant.
Yes, but you've forgotten. He first asks Jude Law to hold crown.
To hold crown, yeah. And he holds that crown.
He does hold the crown.
Yeah.
He stares at it for a while and thinks, "Oh, it's quite a nice weight to it. Let's just..." He's
more of a portrait of character than Mufasa was in Lord of the Rings with Scar, and it's almost exactly the same setup.
Yeah.
So Eric Bana charges into the elephant, takes it down. The elephant like explodes and like collapses, and then all of a sudden Eric Bana's there and he's fine, and he doesn't even like have a scratch on his face or anything like that. We then flash forward and see Jude Law do all the weird. Go on, Tate. Go on, see what you just typed.
No, I'm good.
Let's just say, for anyone who's seen the movie Grimsby, which involves an elephant in some way, it was a comment relating to that. Thankfully, that doesn't happen in the movie. But we see Jude Law doing his like mystic mumbo jumbo, and he wants to. He basically wants to become a sorcerer, doesn't he? So he kills his wife because There's weird monsters, and this is so like I'm having a hard time explaining this. The movie doesn't even go out of its way to explain.
Here we go. So his total aim is you've got to kill the bloodline. So people in the bloodline, it's the son named Arthur and the father named Uther. So who does he kill first? Neither of the people on the list. He basically kills the wife of Uther, which I guess kills off the bloodline. But then again, Uther could very easily get away from it. Like, Uther stays and fights, and Arthur watches. He gets a cut on his hand, which is meant to be significant later on in the film. It isn't. And then from there, basically, Uther gets defeated, but decides instead of doing the normal thing, like just telling his son to flee or fly, you fool. Instead, what he does is says, run, even though the only place where he can run to is a boat, which is what he's sat in right now. So instead, he kind of rows away like Gendry. He throws the sword up in the air, defies the laws of physics by having it spin a couple of times and land blade side down, like that, down his neck, instead of the weighted end being the hilt, for some apparent reason. That turns him into stone for some reason, and like
it's a magic sword, Tayte. Of course it does.
Okay, moving on from that, basically, after that, Jude Law becomes the king, a wise ruler, I believe.
Can I talk about that moment though, where he kills his brother? Is his brother? I think it's his brother.
He kills his wife.
He kills the wife, but he basically makes a blood sacrifice to these things in the water. Now, when I was watching this scene, because I mean, I know characters and stuff from the Arthurian legend, you see this thing in the water, I thought, oh, that's going to be the Lady of the Lake. And we see this creature that he's made a blood oath to, and the only way I can describe this thing is Ursula from The Little Mermaid, to carry on with the Disney comparisons. It's almost exact. If you're going to do a live-action adaptation of The Little Mermaid, which I've heard has been in the works, this is how you're going to make Ursula look. And then she's got like two sisters, lovers, spawn children. No, I don't know. And they're like really hot, even though they've got like tentacle legs. And all you like Japanese hentai people are going to be like posting your comments now. So he does that. And then basically he shows up as Skeletor. But when I was watching it, I didn't realize inherently that was going to be Jude Law. I guessed it was because, the Skeletor was trying to kill the king. And that was Jude Law's.
I thought what it was he would sacrifice a loved one, and then that would summon this demon to fight along his side.
Yeah.
Like,
but apparently not, because he looks like Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat, and we'll get back to the Mortal Kombat comparison at the very end of this film. So, and then we flash forward to where King Arthur's grown up, and we get this extended montage of seeing him, grow from a kid to an adult, and he steals and he learns how to work the streets.
It's a really jaded montage because no words are spoken, but there's like a really weird kind of jungle vibe drum beat.
Yeah,
it's like, and it's just like him growing up, and it's just like, what?
But we don't get any dialogue during this scene. We just sort of watch this montage play out as he learns how to fight in the fighting pits, how he's stealing money, how he's saving the money up. He's raised in a brothel, and things like that. But we miss out. There's no scenes dedicated to his character here during growing up, which is the most important time of the character, arguably, because we need to see what kind of man he becomes when he becomes, I know he's not King Arthur at this point, but where he becomes the Arthur that we know, and we don't get anything. So essentially we keep just seeing, and if we're going to do a drinking game with this film, I want to take a shot every time he has visions of Skeletor, because we literally saw this scene about 5 to 10 minutes ago, and the movie just keeps reminding us, and it's like, I haven't forgotten movie.
It's just like, he's important. It's an important character goal.
Yeah, it's like I've that image is burned into my mind. I'm never gonna forget that, because I was questioning it all the way through this movie until I realized that it was actually Jude Law who was Skeletor. It's God, this is actually a chore to talk about this movie because it's so bad.
It really is. Like,
should we talk about David Beckham?
Okay, so after a while, the sword reveals itself. The lake drains. And people start trying to remove the sword from the stone. Now, here's the thing. If I was Jude Law and I knew the rightful king was going to be a random dude who was going to pull the stone from the sword, would you not just, instead of having random people come up and take the sword from the stone, would you not just guard the sword from the stone? Then no one can take the sword, and therefore no one can make the prophecy come true.
Or have all crossbows trained on the sword, so that when it does start like budging out of the stone, just let fly and boom.
As soon as it starts to pull up, like you shoot that person. You shoot that person dead. Like no chances. Like because he basically gave him a chance, and then the mage and gang, mage and friends or whatever we're calling it, comes and saves them. Like saves their lives and stuff like that. They add a bit more backstory hate for Arthur to hate on Vortigern by having him murder like the prostitute mother or whatever it was like that he had.
We actually need to talk about David Beckham.
Oh, do we genuinely have to talk about David Beckham?
I know you were talking about.
Over it.
I know you were talking about.
I was just going to go past it completely.
No, we need to talk about this because this was fucking downright embarrassing. David Beckham, obviously everyone knows him, ex-footballer. Some regard him as a great footballer. I don't watch football, so I can't comment or speculate. He's certainly not an actor.
Liverpool, so he's an okay footballer.
He's certainly no actor, and he only gets like a handful of dialogue. But I hate cameos like this that are just really on the nose and just completely pointless. But if you're going to throw him in there, have him be a random guard during like a battle or something. If I ask someone who doesn't know much about King Arthur but knows the main points, what is the quintessential King Arthur scene in the entire legend? It's pulling Excalibur out of the stone. So why do you throw him into that one scene that's meant to be the most iconic scene in King Arthur?
Or receiving the sword from the Lady in the Lake.
Yeah,
those
exactly. Yeah.
Which, funnily enough, they've burned every single Arthurian legend in one go. Good job. Good job. Like, I didn't even want to talk about it because it's shocking.
It has to be brought up. It has to be brought up.
It's shocking acting on his part, and it's a shocking decision. I know that he's your friend, Guy Ritchie, but come on, display your friend life, career life, two different things, okay? Mm-hmm. And then let's move on to where I was going. Mage and gang come and save Arthur, lose a couple of people, and Arthur is a massive knobhead about it. Like, he's like, oh, you're pretty. Thank you for saving me. And then it's just like, what a fucking tool. How are you meant to make us like this person when all we've seen him do so far is beat up random people on the street? Like, go and rob people of their money. Like, and then hit on girls when they're the ones rescuing you. What kind of picture do you really want to paint here for the hero that you have? It
wasn't even done like in a charming way, was it?
He doesn't even sacrifice himself for any member of the team at any point during this film.
No.
Like, he doesn't exude, I am a leader. He basically was the backstory. It was like he is the back character to his own story, which is ridiculous. Like, if anyone's a leader of that group, it's what's this called? Black dude.
I know the actor's name from spelling, but I don't know how to pronounce it.
But he's the character he plays is Bedev.
Yeah, he's in a lot of movies.
He was basically he was the leader of that group. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
Now, being second in command, he's basically the foot soldier.
With King Arthur, you really need a character that's like, or an actor that can portray a character like Aragorn, for example. How when we meet Aragorn in the first movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, he's Strider, he's a man of the world, he's trying to get away from his destiny, he's scared by his destiny, and you could bring a similar element of that to the King Arthur character, where he's grew up on the streets, he's kind of a down and out, and he knows that he has this big destiny in front of him, but he's scared to take that destiny on. And then by the end of the movie, like Return of the King, you could have him accept that and become the leader of the people that he should be. But you don't, even by the end of this film, when he finally does become king and he beats Vortigern, you don't care. There's no real growth in him. He hasn't really become a different person. His mannerisms are exactly the same. And that's a problem to me. He's not a character that's compelling, and he's not a kingly character at any point.
Yeah.
And really, neither of the Knights of the Round Table by the end of this film. Yes, they're quirky and like they have more of a personality than he does, but even still, it's very, very weird. Can we talk about the moment where after he's going on these travels, he fights giant CGI creatures out of nowhere?
Yeah.
He fights what, giant CGI rats, which are like the first tutorial quest of any RPG, fantasy RPG, like Skyrim or The Witcher or anything. You always fight giant rats.
Talking about The Witcher, there's going to be a Witcher Netflix TV series, which is going to be way better than this film.
Yeah. Oh, that would be cool. That will be cool.
Be ridiculous. But no, he basically goes on a side quest.
Yeah. He fights giant bats, and this is where we see. Bear this in mind.
Hold on. Is there a game to this film? I really want to know.
Oh God, I hope not. Like a mobile game or something, maybe. But he fights giant bats. He flies around on giant bats, and this is where we get our first glimpse, by the way, of something that's going to come up much later in the film: a giant basilisk-like snake. There's no explanation for this snake. Like all the other animals, fair enough. You can kind of go fantasy, you know, whatever. It is what it is. But then a giant snake, for some reason,
there isn't a game. Sadly,
no. Sadly, I think that's a blessing.
It would only make sense if there was a game.
This is what I mean with this film. So much random shit is just thrown into the film with no explanation. Like, there's certain things in fantasy that you just take for granted. Like, for example, when a mage shows up, you don't go, oh, well, people can't do magic like that in real life. This movie's bullshit, because there are certain rules and regulations to the world of fantasy that you just kind of accept. Yeah. And there's like, you know, she has the power to transmit herself into animals, like to warg into them like Bran can from Game of Thrones, and that's fine, stuff like that. But if you have creatures that are native to the world, that's fine. But when you throw in like 100-foot snake,
yep,
and you don't expect, when real snakes do exist, we see regular sized ones there.
And then here's the thing: throughout the entire thing, he's being chased by wolves, and then he gets to the wolves, and the wolves back off.
Yeah. Well, this is where he's resisting the sword, isn't he? And she keeps saying,
here's the thing. Even after this, they have to spend an entire scene, like, it was basically pointless, because the entire thing is basically, you have to unleash your potential, you have to learn how to wield the sword. And then he doesn't learn, and then he has to have an entire other experience to learn how to wield it properly. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. It keeps showing you that flashback at the start. By the way, I forgot to mention at the start of this movie, doesn't this movie have like 2 opening title sequences?
It does.
And it's like this really weird, like, texting, like, boom, King Arthur. It's just like thrown onto the screen. That was hilarious, by the way. We get to so we have this chase through the street, which if you're gonna pick a best bit of this movie, it's probably that, although that's really not saying much. But we kind of did hint at it before. The part where he finally starts to use Excalibur is horrendously awful. Just unfathomably awful. I don't know who okayed to have this element, that this visual element of the sword.
To have this film, to be honest, every part of it is just like that scene. It looked like he was fighting in a Batman game style, and he slides to the next person. Okay, this is different elements of video games thrown into a film, and we all know that video game films just do not work.
Yeah.
So
actually, going back with that Batman Arkham thing, I don't know if you played the new game Arkham Knight, but there's a takedown you can use in it called Fear Takedown, where you've built up a bar and then you literally just jump down and you tap square and you just zip to all the people and immediately take them out, and the camera is as crazy and, you know, 360 rotating around the character as this is. It just doesn't work for this. All you wanted was like a magic sword that he just hits people with. You can still have the whole trigger god mode thing on, like he does with this. But I just have a question of it. And the CGI is so bad as well. So bad in these scenes. Let's just get to the ending where he fights Jude Law. And this was hilarious, by the way, because he squares off on him. So Jude Law turns into Skeletor again. And it's like a scene from Mortal Kombat. And it's like, you may as well just superimpose the round one. But just to make it look cooler, the sword teleports them, or the tower teleports them to a more cinematic looking fight location, which is so weird.
They're at the top of the tower and it teleports them to what's it called?
It's like a plateau in the middle of the ocean.
It's like a place in the middle of the ocean, but people can still see the fight happening from the outside. Yeah, and then at the end of the fight scene, they end up on the ground floor again.
It's like have you ever played the fighting game Soul Calibur?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
It reminded me of that, like an environmental takedown, like you could kick him into the water or something like that.
Yeah.
So they have this really long, drawn-out CGI fight, and this is where I mean the reaction commands were coming in. I turned to my friend and said, "Which character do you want to be? Pick up a controller, let's play this." And then as soon as the fight's over and he beats him, he's back in the original location he was when he first approached him, and we're no longer in this, ocean plateau. It's
yeah, but so dude, the table is broken, which means Aslan will rise again.
Yeah, I was a bit slow on that there.
I got my legends mixed up there. Sorry.
Wow, that was a reference from 2005. I completely forgot about that movie.
Wow, references going all the way back.
We referenced stuff. Yeah. He beats him, and then the final element of the movie is really just them building the round table and completing that, and he knights all of his friends who become the Knights of the Round Table, and then they sequel bait, which is adorable. And then we hit credits.
Adorable.
Literally, as soon as the credits hit, my friend just was like, I don't care if there's a post-credit scene, I'm out of here. And he stormed out within the first 5 seconds.
Basically, we sprinted out. We wanted to be the first people out, but we were beaten to the post by another set of people who really didn't like the film. A couple of people were staying, like, sat there back in their chairs, eating their popcorn, chatting to each other whilst the credits were going on. I'm just like, you really want to stay here after that shit show? It's like, are you expecting more shit to fly out onto the screen and hit you in the face, and that's what you're waiting for? No.
We should say as well, this movie was in 3D. I
didn't watch it in 3D.
I went to see it in 2D. God knows what this film would have looked like in 3D. A lot of it's really dark.
You probably get a lot of motion sickness. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah, I was getting motion sickness, and it was 2D. Yeah. I guess we'll end with overall opinions again. We've already talked about it. People know our opinions.
Congratulations! The Legend of Arthur, or whatever it's called, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. You are definitely going to end up on one of the worst films of the year lists. God help us if a film comes along that is worse than this one.
Absolutely. I mean, I go and see a lot of movies every year, so I mean, I'm struggling to think of the ones I've already seen this year. What ones might be in my worst list?
Covenant is close, and
yeah,
that's purely none of the Oscar films were over, like they weren't that bad. But yeah, like this is definitely the worst film we've had so far.
Yeah, like most of the ones I've seen before have been entertaining. Like I really liked Lego Batman, for example. Logan, Ghost in the Shell, I thought was okay. I know a lot of people didn't like that, and there's been a lot of like John Wick 2 was I loved. That was massively entertaining. Even Fast 8.
Dude, you're forgetting about talking about the OG La La Land.
That was 2016 movie. No, I know we have this disagreement every single time.
No, we said that it would count for this year. We did.
It's a 2016 movie, Tate. We just got it in 2017. That's not our fault. That's a fault of the film release schedule. But yeah, no, I would absolutely not recommend this movie at all. Don't waste your time going to see it. Wait until next week when you have, if you want to see Baywatch. I mean, I know a lot of people are looking forward to that, or Pirates of the Caribbean 5. There's going to be much better movies coming out now as we hit summer, and this movie is just going to fall to the wayside. There is nothing.
Just like what I think, well, at the start of the year, I thought was going to be the worst film of the year with Despicable 3.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to put money on that being the worst film of the year. Still, after seeing this film.
Not the Emoji Movie.
Ooh.
Actually that's a bet. That's a bet we could have. What's going to be worse, the Emoji Movie or I can't even say it. Despicable Me 3.
Okay, guys, in the comments, please tell us what is going to be the worst movie of the year. Is it going to be this film? Is it going to get is everything going to kind of step up after this? Is it going to be Despicable 3, or is it going to be the Emoji Movie? Or is it going to be completely blindsiding us? Is it going to be one of the major release films that we thought was going to be good but ended up being tragically bad?
There's really not...
Disappointment does trump bad filmmaking.
Yeah. Really, the only films in terms of that category for me are going to be like War for the Planet of the Apes or Blade Runner 2049. Blade Runner 2049 being the biggest one of that, I think.
Or Dunkirk being horrible, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah. I'm trying. Don't go and see King Arthur. If you want to see another King Arthur movie in some way, watch like Disney's The Sword in the Stone, or DreamWorks A Quest for Camelot. If anyone remembers that movie from the, what was it, like the mid-90s, the late 90s. Yeah, I've said everything I can on this piece of shit movie. Don't go and see it at all, guys.
Yeah, just don't.
That'll do it for our review on King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of this movie. Do you completely agree with us? Or on the flip side, is there actually something you really enjoyed about this movie? Anything you like, do get commenting and let us know. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, we'll have more movie reviews. We're aiming to get a review out for Baywatch and Pirates of the Caribbean next week. In the lead up to Pirates of the Caribbean, starting tomorrow, actually, we're going to have a review for each of the previous 4 Pirates of the Caribbean movies, starting with Curse of the Black Pearl, working our way through to On Stranger Tides in lead up to the new movie. There'll be more trailer reactions from me as and when trailers come out. Tate, you've got 2 new shows on the go now, if you want to talk a bit about those before we end.
Yeah, sure. So we have the first episode up of Film Club. There was a slight audio, well, not audio, there was a slight visual quality thing going wrong there, but I've now switched to a brand new, slightly higher definition camera. So it means that hopefully, fingers crossed, it shouldn't be a problem in the past. In that show, we basically talk about just a random film. We ask some questions. We have a nice, friendly discussion. It's quite quick fire. In the other one, which is Thoughts on Film, I basically I speak my mind about a certain film and a certain topic on that film. So the last one I did was Taken, and the amount of crime actually committed in that film, taking away the experience from me. So if you like those kind of things from cinema, go watch those shows. They're usually going to be on every Friday, I believe. So,
yeah, and George has got the Rockathon going. Tom has the Best Picture going as well. So there's a lot of new shows on the channel now. There'll be a brand new Battle of the Brackets out as well before the end of this month. So stay tuned for more details on that on our Facebook and Twitter. Links to those are in the description down below. That'll do it from us today. And until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.